What's up, everybody? Let's spin some yarn. First of all, sorry for the break, I guess. It was inadvertent. I haven't posted anything. I think it's been about a week and a half, going on 2 weeks since the last Foundations episode dropped. So, a lot going on. I'm going to explain some of it in this episode. There's a lot going on. I'll get to that. Good stuff coming, though. I also apologize if I sound a little off. I'm extremely tired and not sick, but just allergies are destroying my entire soul. So a little like weird dry mouth and like the congestion and all the crap I'm sure a lot of you are experiencing this time of year. I always get wrecked this time of year, especially in the Pacific Northwest when the weather changes. It destroys me. I've been purposefully delaying this one. I created an image for it a while back. Kind of I thought I'd do it sooner as like a what I've learned thing in relation originally to the whole cancer thing. I weirdly had this perspective going into it that I was gonna like almost like I needed it to happen. I talked to some people close to me when it first came up about how I thought to myself once I was diagnosed that almost like of course I was like I saw it coming in some weird way, and that I like needed it in a weird way. Like I thought that it was something that would kind of snap me out of what I thought was a negative predisposition towards certain things, or like an outlook that I needed something like this to overcome. I mean, I didn't know it would be this, obviously, but it just some kind of like adversity or experience in a way that would kind of make me appreciate things differently. And I kind of oddly, I think a lot of people in retrospect look back after experiences like this and take the lessons from it. But I kind of went into it knowing that there was going to be lessons, and I was kind of looking for them. And then it went a weird way that I didn't really expect it to, where, and I've mentioned it a few times on various different podcasts when I was either talking to someone or I just kind of referenced it. Where during the experience, got diagnosed and then ended up at a university hospital where the best doctors in the world were just telling me that I was going to be fine. And I believed them, and they were right. And I mean, who knows what the future holds? I mean, they were very open about the radiation treatment could cause follow-on cancers. Your cancer could come back. It's very unlikely, but. So there's always, possibilities that things come back, or that there's different variants that I could get based on the exposure and all this other stuff. But they are extremely confident that that's not going to happen. And I'll get to some other reasons why I don't think it's going to happen, even though there's no way for me to know that later. But so I kind of, the scary part for me was the surgery. Got brain surgery, but it was through my nose, removed a tumor or whatever. It was gnarly, but that was the scary part for me, because they put me under, and there was a possibility they were going to have to like split my whole head open and all this other craziness. So that's what I was afraid of. Once that was over and I was recovering, and kind of got like discharged from the hospital recovering, that was the scary part for me. When they described radiation to me, it just, you're going to be miserable for like 8 to 10 weeks, and then you'll recover eventually and be fine. I was like, so deployment, got it. And that's like, I explained that, I don't know, whatever euphemism to my oncologist, and he got a kick out of that. But that was the easy part for me, even though it sucked. Like, I was miserable, don't get me wrong. Like, I say that was the easy part, and my wife will probably roll her eyes, because I was miserable for a good period of time. Went on a liquid diet for a couple weeks, lost 25 pounds. It was gnarly, but it was it's like I can do that. Like I know I have the capacity to exist in a dark place for a long period of time because I've done it a whole bunch of times. And it's not fun, and I don't like it when it's happening. And I mean, there's probably moments where I'm a miserable wreck of a human being, but I know I can. There's never any doubt in my mind that I can do that. What I didn't see coming was the anxiety and mood stuff. I hesitate to say depression, only because I've never been in a place where it's been like self-loathing, where I've had issues with my own like self-worth or value or anything like that. I've never, at least not, I mean, in this period of my life, I've never, it was never suicidal ideations, thoughts, behaviors, anything like that. I never got, I never even trended that direction at all. It was just, I just wasn't happy. And to the point where I like during radiation treatment, it might've been right before actually, but it was right around when I started. I was real irritable. I was real short with people. Me and my wife, like, she was a saint about it, but she dealt with it for a bit and then kind of confronted me about it. At the same time, I started to notice it. I remember vividly I was shoveling dirt out of my truck because I mean, when I first started radiation, I felt normal. Like I felt probably better than I had in a really long time because I was sleeping better because I didn't have a giant tumor in my sinuses anymore, so I could breathe better. And the effects of the radiation treatment are cumulative. So like the fatigue and all the gnarly stuff hadn't happened yet. I think I had like one treatment at that point. And so I was shoveling dirt out of my truck into garden beds and planters and stuff. And this little girl next door, right next door neighbor, just said, "Hi, neighbor." And I felt myself turning around to snap at her for like violating my silent moment of whatever was, I don't know, like Zen or whatever, where I was just like working, and I caught myself, thank God. And then I was immediately like disgusted with myself for even like like, you know, like even having that thought cross my mind and turning to actually act on it. Like I was just so angry and irritable and just on a hair trigger all the time. And I thought it was really weird, and that it was kind of like I told my wife about that thing. And then that kind of, I had cracked the door open for her to walk through and be like, you need to figure this out because you've been short with me and irritable and snappy and just kind of not a super fun person to be around. She kind of told me like, you need to do something about this. And this was more of like the mild introductory conversation. And then later on, after radiation was over, because I mean, I was in bed a lot and I was miserable all the time. So it was like, I mean, I had other reasons to be miserable, but so this was like the first time she brought it up, after I recovered from radiation. So this is like months later. I was kind of okay. I was just happy to be feeling better and all this other stuff. And then I went back to work not long after. I still had fatigue, but all the gnarly, like side effects and stuff had kind of cleared up. And then it kind of started happening again, and it was affecting our relationship. And that's when she kind of was like, you need to fix this. This clearly isn't related to, like directly related to the treatment, like the discomfort and all the crappiness. It was something else going on here, and you need to figure it out. And then weirdly, it was just like coincidentally, like a couple of guys mentioned to me that they had gone to like a mental health counselor, like chiefs, just guys I was interacting with during inspections or buddies of mine or whatever, like just in normal interactions. Just weirdly, it kept coming up like over and over. And I wasn't out telling this story. I wasn't out like sharing all my intimate moments and the weak points where I was snappy and whatever, I wasn't telling everybody about the stuff. They just mentioned it as I talked a little bit about retirement, or just in general. They just kind of mentioned that they were going to go do it, and they suggested I should do it. And it kept coming up. And so finally, I had in my mind, like, hey, I have this issue. My wife is telling me I need to deal with it. Other people are suggesting this thing I talk about on this podcast, that like the go ask for help if you need it in relation to anything. So I took some of my own medicine and I went and talked to my doc and was like, I push it and I champion it that there shouldn't be like a negative connotation or whatever attached to like mental health treatment. And my perception is that there really isn't anymore. It's very accepted a very accepted thing to go do to deal with the stress of our job, right? I'm also old. I've been around a long time, and for the lion's share of my career, it was this weird taboo thing, especially in the submarine force. We have this weird cultural thing where it's like you're quitting or something. And I'm sure that applies elsewhere, but there was always that, it's like that scarring in the back of your mind where, it's okay now, but it used to not be. So I have just this scarring in the back of my mind that makes me think of the negative reactions people used to have to it. And so it's kind of just this thing where you might want to do it, but you avoid it like the plague, because you lose your security clearance, or you could get ostracized from the community, or people could judge you, and all the other things that they're all reasons that people still fear it today. I still see it talked about, but I was like consciously aware that it wasn't those aren't things I need to be worried about anymore. But it still made me hesitate a little. Like it still took me a little bit, but I went and talked to my doc, and I pulled him into a room and just said, hey man, what does mental health counseling look like for a guy like me? And I was, I'm not suicidal. I'm not depressed. I don't think, at least not in a way where it's like self-loathing, or like that I have like issues there with my own value or anything like that. But there's something wrong. And I don't know what it is, and that was the weirdness of it for me, was that I looked at my whole cancer experiences behind me and that I'm totally fine and there's nothing to worry about. So why would I have an issue with that? So why do I have this anxiety? Because I couldn't sleep, and I had that like real nervous feeling in my stomach constantly, and it would keep me awake. Or if I did fall asleep, I'd wake up a lot and I'd have trouble getting back to sleep. So I couldn't sleep. I was in a terrible mood. I was worried about stupid things. I was really short-tempered. So I just told him like, hey, like I don't know what's going on here, but I think I need to talk to somebody and figure it out. Like I need to start trying to figure it out, because it's like one of those things where I'm a big fan of trying to do it myself and solve the problem. I like fixing things, but I pretty quickly realized that I had no idea what was wrong. So how do I fix something if I don't know what's wrong? But something's definitely wrong. I just don't know what it is. So I skeptically went into it. Kind of, I don't know. I was just worried about maybe like the experience itself. Would I be as open-minded as I needed to be? Would I get the right person? I've heard a lot of people talk about like, hey, you gotta just keep saying no until you get the right one that like you connect with and whatever. I think I got pretty lucky, because I first guy I talked to, initially, not gonna lie, passed a little judgment when I first walked in, because he's extremely young. And I was just like, oh, great. Yeah, I'm totally going to be able to, you know what I mean? Like, I just didn't think I'd be able to relate to him or connect to this dude at all, because he's super young, lieutenant. But he's awesome. And I'm really glad that I did it and stuck around. But what was really weird for me, just to rewind some, I guess, this is a little meandering and I apologize, but a little stream of consciousness today. I was confused because like when we first started talking, like one of the first things we talked about was like kind of when did this start? And I was like, well, like when it became a problem was when cancer happened, but when did it start? I'm like, years ago. Like I've always kind of had some anxiety that, I mean, it affected me, but I just didn't think it was a problem. I just thought it was normal, like nervousness. I probably wouldn't have called it anxiety back then. I would have it's just like I'm nervous about a thing that's happening tomorrow or whatever. An example is like when I stood diving officer watch in my last submarine. For those of you that don't know, I've talked about it a few times, but just in case, just to recap, it's like flying an airplane underwater. So that's kind of the job. If you ever watch a submarine movie or something, it's the guy in the chair that's piloting the submarine. You're in control of the two guys or gals that are in front of you driving. So one's generally controlling effectively up down, like if you're thinking about like ascent and descent for an airplane, so like increases or decreases in depth, and then there's one that's controlling your angle, and generally the up down one is also the rudder. So that's like direction and up down, and then one's kind of controlling the angle of the submarine, which also affects up down because point something in a direction and add propulsion, it's going to go that direction generally. And then you're also controlling buoyancy. So like one of the ways in which we kind of pilot a submarine is you pump water on and off the submarine and ballast tanks to make it either positively or negatively buoyant. And you have to there's a lot of math, get into load supportability and all these things where you're calculating like the weight of the submarine and what a neutral trim is, and there's all kinds of stuff that goes into it, but you're in charge of all those things. You're in charge of those watchstanders. You're in charge of the guy. There's another watchstander that's a very senior enlisted watchstander called the chief of the watch, that is the operator of the panel. We call it the ballast control panel, that in addition to actually pumping the water where I need it to, so I'll give him an order to move water where I want it. He's also in control of like all of the MC circuits, so he'll be the one on the 1MC making announcements, kind of like the casualty coordinator. Like if we were to have a fire or flooding, he's controlling all the things, the alarms, he pressurizes the fireman, he does all kinds of stuff. Or she, nowadays. I had enlisted officers, so it's not always as quick for me to correctly pronoun things, so I apologize, but definitely some female sailors out there qualified chief of the watch and dive and such, so I want to make sure I get that in there as well. But so that's what when I was standing that watch, you're the most senior enlisted watchstander in the submarine. You're in charge of the entire watch section. I have an officer of the deck above me, but that's it, and a lot of times they trust me and ask for my recommendations or advice. So that's also daunting. But you're responsible for ship safety. I'm driving the ship, like for all intents and purposes, like I'm literally piloting, whatever you want to call it, the submarine. And it's terrifying for me. I don't know if other people feel this way and just do a great job of hiding it. I should probably ask some buddies of mine, but it scares the bejesus out of me. It's just one of those things where I don't think I'm wired to, like, I can do it, and I think when I'm forced into that type of situation, I rise to the occasion, and I'm very well prepared, and I study a lot. I do the best I possibly can, and as a result of that preparation and just me taking it seriously, I generally do pretty well. So that was what was weird about it, is I was doing well standing that watch, but I hated it. I don't like the feeling of having, at least in my mind, having people's lives in my hand, or having people and the ship's safety in my hands. It's not something that I like. It's not something that I deal with well. And so it affected me quite a bit, where I would worry a lot that I was never going to be prepared, or I wasn't going to know what to do when something happened, or even when we were just doing drills or certain evolutions. Because like you go to periscope depth, it's a really dangerous thing. And we did it all the time. So it was just like every watch, I'd probably go to PD at least once. And then drills, you're doing things with the ship that are kind of freaked me out. Like you're not just pretending, like you're actually doing a lot of things with the submarine when you're running ship-wide drills for like casualties and stuff like that. And so I just always thought I was going to screw up. So I was constantly studying. I'd kind of like look ahead, see what we were going to do the next day. And then I'd study, and then I'd be skinning in the rack to go to sleep, and I couldn't sleep because I was thinking and worrying and whatever. So that's kind of the origin of it. That's as far back as I can remember it anyway, because I never had the same type of concern about my job. The first Chiefs tour I did, I was qualified some of these things. But mostly when I was a chief, I mostly only stood duty in port. They just didn't, I was just on the mess decks doing the CS chief things when we were at sea. I did some other stuff too, but wasn't really in control standing watch. I did a little bit at the beginning of my time there, but after I made chief, because I was there as a first class for a while. After I made chief, I didn't really spend much time in the control room. So I don't recall ever worrying about my job in the same way. Like I definitely, I had a concern like that drove me to prepare, work really hard to make sure we had everything we needed and my guys were trained and all the things were going right. But I never remember like being anxious about the possibility of failure or anything like that. Like I never had that issue because I felt like I could just prepare my way out of it. And it was one of those things I felt like I was like a very high level expert at what I was doing. So I just felt like I was as prepared as I could possibly be and I'd be all right. But when I got into this realm, I think in addition to my just not being wired for this type of task, I never felt prepared. I never felt like I had like that high level understanding, even though I mean, other people would say that I did, but I just didn't agree with them. I had a CO and a chief of the boat they said, you're really good at this and that you get it and you're better at this than you think you are. And they were trying to kind of reassure me. And I just never felt like I had a great command of it. It just terrified me because the consequences were so high. Of like screwing it up, the consequences were extremely high. So that's kind of where it began. And I never really took it super seriously. I just thought it was normal without ever exploring if it was, which I'm curious to see, like I mentioned, if other people kind of thought about it the same way or had the same issues. But and then we talked about kind of like the why of how I arrived at it. Was like it was always kind of there beneath the surface. I think that my work-life balance was always terrible. Well, almost always terrible. But I was working so much that it would distract me from it as long as I wasn't in those types of scenarios where I was in a position where people's lives or safety were in my hands. So it didn't become such a large issue that I felt like I had to deal with it in any kind of way where it's like I really need to make this a priority and I need to take some type of actual action besides just grinning and bearing it. So then when I got diagnosed, the way I've been describing it is it's kind of, so it was always there. It was always beneath the surface, but I was able to just kind of ignore it. The cancer thing was like pulling a pin on a hand grenade in my brain. Like it just all of it came to the surface immediately, and it's like, you're going to deal with this right now. And didn't care how I felt about it. Didn't care if I was ready or if it was a convenient time. It was just like, nope, we're doing this now. I'm like, okay. And I still don't quite understand why. Still working on that, but as I've kind of started dealing with this, I've been talking to my therapist for like, it's probably been like 6 weeks. I've seen him like 5 times. It's been like an every 2 weeks type thing. Just saw him today. It's been like what kind of trying to just figure out what I need to do to get some type of a healthy balance in my life to level me out, I guess. And that in addition to just like talking through all these things, because I still don't feel like I know why it's an issue. And weirdly, like I've coming to a conclusion sort of at least the effects of it, I guess, or what I've learned. Starting to get to the part about what I've learned is, I was considering retirement. I've talked about that a bunch, where I've been going back and forth about it. A couple of reasons why I was still hung up on not doing it was, the first one was I felt like I'm healthy now, so I'm fine, whatever. I can still do all the things I wanted to do, but I had in the back of my mind, I had this question about like, well, why did I get cancer? And I know that's probably, it feels like an almost impossible question to answer, but I decided to take a shot and ask my oncologist, who shockingly to me, not definitively, but pretty close, he told me that the only risk factor I had was work-related stress. And he's like, that's basically why. Even though there's no way for him to be positive. He's just like, the only risk factor you have is work-related stress. And it's not normal work-related stress. Like normal people outside of, there's some people in the quote-unquote civilian world that you could find, like a police officer or like a firefighter. So I don't know. Like I'm sure there's jobs like that are just stupid stressful in the civilian world, but he goes, your level of stress at work isn't normal. It's like insane. And it's the only risk factor that you have. So it's like, it's work-related stress. And he's like, I'm not telling you how to live your life because it's not my place. But if I were you, I would remove that risk factor. So that was a pretty shocking conversation to have, where I thought I was going to get this hemming and hawing, like, well, we're not really sure. So many things could feed into it, blah, blah, blah. But it was not that. And then, so that was one thing that pushed me towards retirement even more, is I'm fearing for my future just like health and wellness. But then the big thing was, I'm a guy that no matter how much I don't want to do a thing, if I feel like I have some sort of an obligation to someone, that's always going to outweigh my personal desire to do it or not. And I can tell you, I have zero desire to ever deploy again, which feels like an obvious thing to say. Like, there are some people that like going on deployment, but they're crazy. I don't have any desire to ever deploy on a submarine again. However, it was like I constantly get from people that I know, and then people even through this podcast that are like the submariners that are listening, that really, really want me to go be a cob and let me know what boat you're going to be on and all these things. Like a couple guys like, you should be the force, and you should be a fleet, and you should be all these things. And so based on those people, you feel this sense of obligation. I have a lot of mentors that think I'd be a really great cob, and I'm really appreciative for that, because I like I've talked about on the podcast, have a complex about being a cook. Like I felt this need to go out there and do it well, and then look around the room and kind of flip everyone on the bird and be like, I told you, like I told you I'd be good at this. I told you I could do it. But I had a conversation with a mentor of mine recently who also oddly had neck cancer, and was a cobb 3 times and a command master chief. And he's the guy that basically taught me how to be a chief. And we're connected and we're talking about our experiences with cancer and all these other things. But during the conversation, he said 2 things that finally made me feel like it's okay to retire. I didn't even know it was a thing I needed until it was said, because I was still hung up. Like I still was like, I knew I wanted to. I knew I felt like it was the right move, but in the back of my mind, I knew that I was going to go back to sea again until this happened, where he basically he told me 2 things. One, which I was a little surprised by, because when he was my cobb, he didn't. I wasn't standing watch and control, and whether or not it's true or not, I felt like it was because I was a cook, and he didn't think that I would be good at it, and I was being underestimated. And maybe that's just my complex speaking. I don't know. But he told me when we talked, he's like, you would be a great cobb. He's like, you'd be better than 99.9% of the people doing it. And so that struck me in a pretty powerful way, that for him to believe that I would be extremely good at it, there's no one whose opinion on this would matter more to me. And then also said, but you don't have to do it. And we went on and to talk about like kind of the why and his experiences with some things, but it was like that effectively gave me permission to retire. Like it was, and I've talked to my wife and my parents about it, but it's just like, I don't think there's anybody else that could have done that for me. They could have said that and it would have mattered in the way that it did, where it was like, I didn't know what I was hung up on, but it's like I needed someone or something, or I don't even know. I didn't know until it happened. I needed permission from someone. I needed somebody, some kind of authority, and I didn't even know if it existed, to grant me permission to retire, to say, hey, it's okay for you to take care of you. It's okay for you to make a decision that's selfish and like self-serving. And that sounds negative, but it's really not. Like it's okay after 20 years of giving pieces of yourself to this organization, to these people, to this mission, that it's okay for you to call it a day. And that was what kind of did it for me. So that's where I'm at now. Is I am 100% retiring in January of 23. The decision's made now. And it was hilarious to me, ironic, whatever, humorous in a way, where this conversation happened, the switch flipped, I made the decision, and I swear to God, 24 hours later, I got an email from the medical folks saying that I got a waiver. We're the radiation people, and then the other medical people at BUMED gave me a waiver for all my medical stuff to go back on submarines permanently. Like I could go back as a cob if I wanted to. And it was just funny because I got that, and you see, you'd think, well, maybe that might sway you, and it didn't at all. I didn't even blink. I was just like, well, better late than never, I guess. But I just don't care. I've arrived at that decision where it's just, I can't. Because one of the things, I've seen people that stick around too long, that become bitter and jaded and angry and negatively affect the people that they're supposed to be leading and mentoring helping accomplish this mission that we do. And I've seen that, and I've always told myself I'm not going to be that guy. I don't care what my lot in life is. I'm not, like, when it's time to go, I'm going to go, because I don't want to stick around just for the sake of sticking around and end up being a burden on people. And I feel like I'm there. I feel like if I went back, it would be because I've talked about it before, and I think a lot of the people that only know me through the podcast that had been encouraging me to go back as a cob, they might have missed the part where I explained I have a really hard time regulating my mood when I'm underway on nuclear power. I have a really hard time like staying in a positive mindset, staying focused on the right things. I think a lot of that is just the way I'm wired, and a lot of it recently, like on my last submarine, it was the first time I had deployed with somebody at home. I'd been single the whole time until I met my wife. And so when I was deploying on that last submarine, I wasn't used to missing someone like that. And I didn't like it at all. And I don't deal with it well. So, yeah, I have a really difficult time with that. And then with this kind of the mental headspace that I'm in now, and with all the things I got going on, where I just feel like I need a lot more balance in my life. I need a lot more focus on the things that will make that balance like healthy and productive, and that will like put me in a good place where I'm like a good person on a regular basis, where I'm happy, where I'm a good husband, all these things that I want. I don't think it would be productive for me to go back to sea, even if I was able to chiclet and duct tape myself back together to like a physically and mentally healthy human being. And I think I might be able to pull that off in the next year and a half. And then if I went back to sea, it would all just explode. And that wouldn't be good for me. And it definitely wouldn't be good for the sailors that I would be charged with leading. So it is what it is. I'm a little like pseudo bummed that it worked out this way, but it is what it is. Like I'm okay with it. I've arrived at a place where I'm at peace with the decision, and so I figured that I should put that out because I've been hemming and hawing about it for so long. But the podcast won't go away. That's a thing I will continue to do, and I think that's another part of it that's almost got me excited about the amount of bandwidth I will be able to devote to this thing. It's kind of one of the positives that I always kind of had on that end of the pros and cons list, was that if I do retire, I'll have a tremendous amount of time and more freedom. I've put limiters on myself where my face and name aren't on it. I'd like to do other things like YouTube, and I've been invited to do public speaking engagements, and I'm like, I can't unless you want to do it remotely without my face, which most people don't. So that's why I haven't done them. But I've been invited to a bunch of stuff that I can't go do it, only because I'm limiting myself in that I don't want my face and name on this while I'm on active duty. So, and there's a bunch of other stuff I want to do as well, but so there's that. But I guess I should probably for the what I've learned part is that it's like the more and I know this is a little cliche, but like I feel like the more I know that I don't know. Like the less intelligent or prepared or whatever I feel to be an adult and to like, I don't know, be in this world and existing as just a mature and healthy human. It's like, I feel like the more and more I think I know, the less and less I actually do. And so I try to consume more and study more and prepare more and just kind of make myself better. But it's like I weirdly feel like almost like an adult child. Like it's so weird. It's hard to articulate. where it's like you feel like when you get, I'm almost 40, you feel like you would get to a place in life where you feel a lot more like secure as you mature and as you just like get more life experience, become more intelligent through experiences of life and study and whatever. And I mean, I have, but I also, I don't know, I just feel this weird vulnerability where it's like I don't know, like I there's so much I don't know. Like I'm even thinking about retirement. Like I don't know how to civilian. You know how many times I've been asked all this stuff about like my medical insurance at civilian hospitals because they just didn't quite understand TRICARE. And I don't know anything about a civilian's health insurance and how it works and what they need to charge it and all this. I've never had to do any of that stuff. There's a lot of other things I've never had to do, so that's going to be a weird adventure. But yeah, I think the biggest thing that I learned is like that there's a limit. And I always knew it was real in a way, but I kind of was also in denial. I just thought I had the world's broadest shoulders and strongest back, I guess, where there's a limit to how much you can give of yourself before the wheels start falling off the wagon. And I guess I just never thought I'd find the bottom or I'd retire before I did. But that didn't happen. I found that I couldn't continue to give. Drop something. I couldn't continue to give productively and effectively until like I got myself in order. And it was weird because for a long period of time I was able to, but I think I just like I took so many pieces of myself away, and a lot of that was just a sacrifice of time, and I just was fully focused on the people that I was charged with leading and the mission and whatever, that eventually like you'd turn around and I didn't have anything. It was just me in a 1-bedroom apartment and I went to and from work. And we had such a crazy op tempo and all these other things, and there were things that I was distracted by primarily. But also like it was really rewarding. I had a lot of human relationships and endured to this day when I was out on some of those submarines. But it was like when it all kind of stops, it's like, what do you got? Like, what do you, who's there to catch you? Like, what's weird is with COVID and the treatment and everything, there was a long period of time where I didn't have a mission and I didn't know what to do with my hands. And all that anxious energy that I would direct towards the long work hours and the problems that would come up and the preparation and all the things that I needed to do, and then the actual work that needed to be done and the watch standing and all those other things, like when that wasn't there anymore, I kind of self-destructed. Like I all that energy needed to go somewhere and it didn't have anywhere to go, and so it started eating me alive, kind of. And so it's like I have to find a way to productively use all that and get some life balance at the same time so that I can be productive in all these other ways that I want to be. Because it was weird. We had our wedding ceremony. It was delayed because of COVID. We've actually been married for like a year, but we had the ceremony about a month ago. About a month ago, a little less than. And my best friend was in town, also a submariner, but he's been out for a long time. Got out after his first enlistment. He asked me, he's like, dude, I know you too well to think that you can retire from the military and be happy without a sense of purpose, like without the fulfillment you get from like being a chief and leading sailors and all this stuff. So he's like, how are you going to get that? I was like, oh, the podcast, that's easy. I've already checked that box. Like I have all of the satisfaction I could ever want from like the helping people part, like the leadership stuff. I'll never not have that as so long as I have this platform or something like it. Also, I'll have my bachelor's degree probably, like I finished my bachelor's like in the fall for organizational leadership, and then I should be able, I got to work with a different school, but I got to figure out how long it's going to take, but I should be able to finish my master's degree either before or just after I retire. And I intend to teach. I think that'll be super rewarding as well. So that was never a question, but it's like, so I could have that, right? And it's not the same thing as the all-consuming expenditure of all of your resources and energy that's required to do the job that we do in the way that I believe it should be done. So that's the part that's weird. That's the part that in my inability to balance, I jettisoned all the normal things people do and all I did was work. In the absence of that, I need to like reinsert all of the things normal people do. So I need like some type of social life, which all of my closest friends, and I'm a small circle type of guy, all live in different places, not here. So it's like I need to create some type of a social structure. I need to do activities with other people besides just my wife and like her family, which is now my family, and I love them to death. But it's like, yeah, I need my own friends. Do things I'm interested in, learn things, be productive. Like basically one of the things my therapist had me do is write down all my priorities and then write down what I'm doing to actually work towards those or kind of like take care of those, like kind of goals, kind of priorities, but like, what am I doing? Like what action am I taking to that end? And if I'm not, what do I need to like plan to, and so I'm looking at all those things like future retirement preparation, financial stuff, security, like just all this stuff that I wrote down as a priority. Like, okay, so what am I doing to work towards those things? Like even like family, like my family is all not even close to the state that I'm living in. So like spending more time when I retire, like routinely visiting to try to get as much time as I can, because my parents are not getting younger. And my brothers, my nieces and nephews, stuff like that. I've been gone for majority of their lives at this point. What am I going to do to do all of those things? And the kind of the conglomeration of all that is what should fill that void, give an outlet to that anxious energy, and kind of level me out. That's the plan anyway. And it seems to be helping a little bit. I can tell you that I'm definitely in a better place than when I started. It's not fixed. And one of the things he said today is it's like, it's not linear. He's like, you're doing well now. You might not be doing well in a few weeks, and that's okay. But there's a plan. And I mean, one of the things I recently started doing jujitsu finally. Jujitsu and kickboxing, which I've always wanted to do. It's super fun. It's like being a little kid again, almost like just on recess. It feels like recess for adults. It's awesome. I love it. But I guess the biggest thread I can, because I was trying to think of pull all these lessons out of it. That was my plan anyway. It was like, I'm going to pull all these lessons out and I'm going to share them with everybody. And then the only thing that I can definitively say is that the more I know, the more I feel like I don't know. And it's kind of a good thing, and that I am using the help that's available to me to figure some of that stuff out. And it's good. I'm glad that I have the help. I'm glad that I was actually open enough to the help, because if I had tried to do this myself, I'm positive I would have failed miserably, and it probably would have affected a lot of things that are dear to me. So yeah, I guess, this has gone on way longer than I planned it, but as far as what I've learned, I hope that just the dialogue, the stream of consciousness, is useful to someone. I know this is a little off the beaten path for what I normally do, but it felt needed. It felt like a thing I wanted to kind of put out there for all of you, just so you kind of know where I'm at, where I'm headed, what the plan is, but also just sometimes when I have these gaps, it's like, that's what's going on. There's days where I just don't want to do anything. And when I have bad days, it's like the last thing on my to-do list is the podcast, and that sucks. And it's not like I don't want to do it. I have a really hard time getting myself to do anything. I've had lots of those days lately, which is awesome. And I'm hoping to get more stuff done for when I do have those days. And I hope to just continue having less of those days and all those things. But it's going to happen. It is what it is. Also, excited for what's to come. That I get to kind of open up the aperture a little bit and start using like more mediums and more, like, I'll just have more options for the podcast and the expanding the platform, having more conversations, just doing new and different things for all of you. So that's cool too. And yeah, I guess I'll wrap this thing up. It's a weird, there's no natural stopping point here, because I was just streaming what's in my brain about this kind of thing, but hopefully that wasn't too terrible. As always, if you need anything from us, hit us up. Don'tGiveUpTheShitPodcast@gmail.com. You can Facebook message us, Don't Give Up the Shit Podcast, or you can hit us up on Instagram or Reddit at DGUTSPodcast. Get in the discussion thread on Reddit and stuff. And just let me know if you need anything, if you got any questions, if you got any suggestions. I'm always in for topic suggestions. Got a heritage episode coming up next that I just finished an outline on. And then should be another foundations coming up. And yeah, that's really it. Got some other stuff I'm working on passively that I'll announce when I get to a place where I'm ready to launch. So that'll be cool too. And that's really it. That's what I got for you today. Thank you so much for listening, and don't give up the ship.